A few months ago, in a Skype cast far, far away. After credits. Episode 1, The Metachlorian Menace. Turmoil has engulfed the Star Wars fan base. Merchandising of toys and collectibles are in dispute. Hoping to resolve the matter, Disney bought out Lucasfilms and aims to control all of film. While fans endlessly debate over this acquisition, the internet has dispatched two Jedi podcasters from patreon.com/evacstation. For less than the cost of the original double-sided lightsaber in its original packaging, you can support their quest for peace and justice on the internet. Again, it's patreon.com/evacstation. Time to settle some conflict. Now this is podcasting. Welcome to the After Credits Cast, the only podcast to shout nonsense at you from the outer rim of the galaxy. We are Obi-Wan Kenobi, and with me today, I've got Rygon Jin.
God, these names are so good. These names are so good. I love it.
Let's be real; these are probably the two best names in the from the entire series we could have done.
You knocked those out the park. Well played, sir. Well played.
In case you hadn't guessed, everybody, we're doing Star Wars for the holiday season, and I am excited. Ryan, are you excited?
I am very excited. It's been a good minute since I've actually delved back into the lore of Star Wars, although it's near and dear to my heart, so I can always talk about Star Wars.
We should probably preface this by saying that I'll preface it by saying I am not a Star Wars expert. I am familiar with a lot of it, and I have read some of the books, and I've watched all the movies, more than once, obviously, multiple times, played some of the games, but I am by no means a deep lorester. So anyone out there who wants to, fight me on anything I say that's incorrect, that's an X-Wing, not an A-Wing, not an R-Wing, not a Wolfen ship, whatever,
You can't forget the Y-Wing.
Can't get the Y-Wing, that's right. Why the Y? I mean, come on. I know there are some of you out there who want to, get up on my grill about it, but trust me, you can be angry at me when we get to The Last Jedi. Until then, let's be cool. Ryan, anything you want to preface with?
Well, I mean, I'm a huge Star Wars fan. I read so many of the Extended Universe books. Let me put it this way. I was such a big fan. I was legitimately pissed off when they decanonized the EU. When it was announced, I was super mad because there were 60 some odd books, and I read a good 40 of them. So I was a little perturbed, but I haven't. Like I said, it's been some time since I've delved super deep back into the lore, so I'm probably gonna get some shit wrong as well, guys. You can at me, hit me up in the comments below. I'll be more than happy to talk Star Wars geekery with you guys. But I am, like I said, I'm just glad to get back into it, and it will be my pleasure to give you the more established fans' perspective on the movies, or at least this established fans' perspective.
Right. Because by no means am I a stranger to anything, but there are obviously details I don't know. It'd be like if we were doing a Naruto series. I could do that back and forth because I know Naruto inside and out. It's a bad example, sure,
right.
But that's the thing my brain encyclopedia'd a long time ago. So
wait, including the filler?
Oh no, not the filler. Fuck the filler.
Oh, thank God! I was about to be like, you poor soul. What are you doing over there?
Oh no, man! I hardcore manga original only.
All right, good man.
I'm sure I'm gonna get some comments for that too, probably.
If you guys like Naruto filler, please leave a message down in the comments. We'll be happy to tell you how wrong you are. Come on, guys.
And if you want to comment down below, we got a little off track there, but if you want to comment down below, you can go also to Twitter and Tumblr and Facebook on our social media platforms. All the different platforms of choice for our podcast as well, including Stitcher, iTunes, Google Play, Peepa, Patreon, TuneIn, and Podcast Addict. Also leave ratings if you like us, because that helps us get more views. Always appreciated. And you can reach out to us directly to tell me why you think One Piece is shit and the filler is horrible or great. I don't care. Ryan, where can they go for that?
They can go to, I don't give a damn how bad you hate this film, Sam Jackson is a fucking Jedi with a purple lightsaber. Sorry. Went a little long there. You can reach us at evacstation@gmail.com.
In all fairness, he gets cooler in the second movie when he actually brings it out. He does
Yo,
get cooler.
I was just happy to see him.
Oh,
like Jules Winfield in the
Uh,
Jedi robe. Let's go. I'm sorry. We'll get there.
Indeed. Our first segment we always do is What You Watchin'. Now, this is going to date us quite a bit, because my What You Watchin' is a new movie that just came out, and I'm pretty sure you're going to say the same thing.
Cagliostro.
So, we're recording...
Timey-wimey bullshit. Don't worry about it, guys.
Okay, so we're recording in July. No spoilers, but we just saw Spider-Man Far From Home. And we're not going to do a deep podcast on it because we're saving all our post-Endgame stuff for later. So we'll get to that at some point.
We could do a separate episode on this movie alone. This was real. This was very real.
We certainly could. But to keep things very brief, because I'm pretty sure we could both deep dive into it super hard. I would say this might be my favorite live-action Spider-Man. It's in contention with Spider-Man 2. They're both really close. They both have things that one does over the other that I like, but it's a really close call to my second favorite Spider-Man overall.
Yeah, it's up there, guys. It was really well done. I don't think I expected them to do Mysterio so perfectly, but holy shit.
He might be the best portrayal of a Spider-Man villain yet. I loved. So, damn it, I'm sorry. I'm gonna keep it brief. I love the new spin that they took on Vulture, and I loved it. I 100% loved it, and I was fully on board with it. Mysterio is like a perfect rendition of the comic book and the old cartoons version of the villain, just put into the silver screen and backed by millions of dollars of CGI. It's fantastic. Like I was having like a bad acid trip watching some of this shit, and it was phenomenal. Please watch that, guys. We'll talk about it one day. Yeah.
But damn, please watch it.
I mean, I guess minor spoiler, Mysterio is the villain, but like if you know anything about Spider-Man, that should have probably been your first guess. But hey, that's all the spoiler we're gonna get on that one. If you have not seen it yet, and by the time this comes out, you'll probably be getting it on DVD. Please check out that mid-credits roll. That mid-credits alone is worth this movie's admission price.
Yeah, I mean, both of the stingers had me catatonic for like a good 20 minutes. And I was in front of my girlfriend, so I was trying not to geek out hella hard. I failed completely. I was just lost.
Dude, as soon as You Know Who pops up on screen in that mid-credits roll, I'm out of my chair clapping. I'm like, fuck yeah, no, this is what I've wanted the whole time.
I just got really tight in my seat and started like clapping, like, oh my god, he's here! Oh my god, we did it, boys!
And the best part too, I was not the only one. There were plenty of people applauding. Like, we've been waiting for that character since before the Amazing Spider-Man films. They both let us down. Homecoming, they were trying to do something different. That's fine. It's about damn time that character came back.
All right, shall we get back to the actual points of the podcast?
Just a quick snippet. The movie did inspire me to get into the Spider-Man game, but that will be a separate podcast I'll talk about. I'll talk about that in I'll talk about that more in Attack of the Clones. So y'all hold off.
Okay, all right. I'm back. All right. Okay.
So, to get on to today's episode, we will be capping off the end of 2019 with a Star Wars retrospective as the Skywalker saga comes to an end this year with Episode 9, The Rise of Skywalker, which, interesting title. Can't wait to find out more about it. We are only doing the mainline films for this season. We are going to go in chronological order for simplicity. Oh, and like I said earlier, keep any comments of hate to a minimum if you could. Just trying to have a good time. Trying to be celebratory here. This is supposed to be fun. So, yeah. Our first venture into the Star Wars, or the Jedi archives will be Star Wars Episode 1, The Phantom Menace. Released in 1999, written and directed by George Lucas, it has earned 1,027,044,000 worldwide. This includes, of course, some re-releases, which is nearly 9 times what it cost.
Yep.
Not bad. The cast includes the likes of Anthony Daniels, Kenny Baker, Frank Oz, Ahmed Best, Pernilla August, Jake Lloyd, Natalie Portman, Ian McDiarmid, Ewan McGregor, and the Jedi with a special set of skills, Liam Neeson.
There he is.
I obviously didn't list everybody, but they'll get their time to shine in the next episodes. Don't you worry. Don't y'all worry. Let's see. We got some notable awards, as you would expect. It's a Star Wars movie. It includes the Saturn Awards for Best Costumes and Best Special Effects, a BMI Film and Music Award to John Williams. I mean, he deserves it for everything. Another German Bogey Award and a Golden Screen Award for undisclosed reasons. I wrote this before we found out what that means. A Guinness World Record for the highest box office gross for a screenwriter, highest box office film gross average for a director, highest grossing space opera movie, and largest film merchandising campaign.
Yeah.
Not gonna lie, Star Wars has got some pretty big stuff going on there. MTV Movie Award for Best Action Sequence for the pod race scene. That's fine. Not my favorite scene, but
I mean, for 1999, damn, that was pretty good.
Yeah, for 99. I have to see what else came out that year, but I could see it. And then finally, a Razzie, several Razzies for is it just one? Yeah, a Razzie for Worst Supporting Actor to Ahmed Best for we'll get to that. He also takes home 3 Stinker Awards for Worst Screen Debut, Supporting Actor, and Botched Comic Relief, with Jake Lloyd taking home Worst Performance by a Child in a Feature Role. Yeah, there's some blemishes here. We'll get to those. Ryan, you have some fun facts for us?
We do have some fun facts, keeping it celebratory. First and foremost, these sets were built only as high as the tops of the actors' heads, and computer graphics filled in the rest. Liam Neeson was so tall that he cost the set crew an extra $150,000 in construction. So, poor guys. Again, that gets into the heavy usage of CGI, but we'll talk about that later. Next up, during filming, of course, Ewan McGregor made lightsaber noises as he dueled. It was noted and corrected during post-production, despite the numerous times that they told him, hey, stop making the noises, please. But, I mean, to be perfectly honest, if you give me a prop, like a lightsaber prop, and I'm actually going to be a Jedi, filming a lightsaber fight, there's no way in hell I'm not going to be making those noises.
I feel like we all have that weakness.
I can't blame him. Last but not least was a surprise even to me. Benicio del Toro was actually originally set to play Darth Maul. Del Toro left the film after George Lucas took most of Maul's lines out of the film. I mean, who could blame him? He finally joined the Star Wars franchise when he played DJ in The Last Jedi, 2017. Darth Maul only speaks a total of 3 lines. It lends to his aura of, quiet menace, but at the same time, it's just dude.
The problem I have with that is his role is very understated, because, he's...
It is.
Yeah, we'll get to that more. We got plenty to talk about. Initial thoughts real quick. So I don't remember seeing this, my first time seeing this, but I know it was in theaters. That much I can remember. My dad took me to it, for sure. Because I know when I was a kid, he got me into the original trilogy. We were all hyped for it. We went to go see this. And as far as I remember, I was too young to know it was an objectively, quote-unquote, bad film. So I was into it back then. But, I'll say that I'm definitely sure it bored me as a kid to an extent, because going back to this, and I remember my times with certain other films, New Hope, I've never really had fun when we're on Tatooine for more than 5 minutes. The other movies always are better to me, because it's oh hey, we're on Tatooine, these planets are really cool. Desert Planet just never clicked with me. Never did.
I hate sand. course. It gets everywhere.
Damn it, that's gonna be our next episode. You just chill. You just bring it down a notch. Bring it down a notch.
You teed it up, sir. I could not swing. All right. Well, my initial thoughts on it. I mean, I was 9 years old when it came out.
Mm-hmm.
I was a huge Star Wars fan. I had watched the original trilogy about 1 billion times, so I was 100% in love with the movie when it first came out. I was also young enough that the stuff that I didn't immediately understand or didn't catch my interest just flew right past me. And I was just kind of like looking for the next thing that would like pique my interest. So my initial couple of viewings were really, really fun. As I got older and started watching it more, I was seeing the blemishes, as you put it, earlier. But I also peeped the meta of what Lucas was trying to accomplish.
And I'm looking forward to getting to that too. I'm looking forward to getting to that.
Yeah. Like so my initial thoughts are like I know the movie has issues. It's arguably the weakest of the new trilogy. Arguably.
I've seen a lot of strong arguments for episode 2, but we can dive into that more next time, for sure.
Yeah, I know. Like, I'm still not sure where exactly I fall in that debate, but it's arguably one of the weaker episodes, but it definitely does a lot of setup that, when you look at the whole story as a saga, actually is really important and very interesting in how he chose to portray it. So it's a good one for me. Mm-hmm. I see the problems, but I still like it.
I also want to add, too, that when I was watching this, I was actively thinking to myself, okay, I would cut this scene. I would cut that out. Cut that. You're cut, too. Millhouse, you're cut. So, yeah, I was mentally doing that, and I'm looking forward to going into this and seeing what we both ended up with at the end of the film. What ended up being our final product.
All right, let's do it.
Okay, here we go. Political shit has caused a trade blockade over the planet of Naboo, so the Jedi Council sends out a young Kenobi and a pot-smoking Qui-Gon Jinn to negotiate. It's a trap! The Jedi barely escape droid attack and find themselves in the service of Naboo. They meet a CGI abomination who takes them to his home city underwater. Boss Nass, ruler of CGI Underwater City, gives them a ship to keep Jar Jar out of the said city. The Scooby Gang then goes to Naboo proper and rescues Princess Amidala. Or Queen Amidala. I think it's Queen at this point, isn't it?
Yeah.
Royalty Amidala and other political leaders. During escape of Naboo, their ship takes damage. Despite R2-D2 coming in to fix it, the ship needs to make an emergency stop on Tatooine. Hey! Remember that from the other movie? Yes, that one! They meet Anakin in his slave town. He likes to race, and a big race is coming up for the whole gang while the whole gang is there. Convenient. Qui-Gon senses big things for Anakin and makes a bet with another CGI stereotype for his freedom. Damn. He obviously wins, and they take Anakin and the parts needed for their ship to leave. As they're about to leave, a horny man with a red stick arrives and slaps sticks with Qui-Gon. They manage to escape and turn to Coruscant to update the Jedi Council. He wants to train Anakin. The Council says no. Senator Palpatine works with Amidala to get assistance for Naboo, but it would be too slow. So Padme, who is really Amidala, steps forth and says she will lead a team to save Naboo herself, with the Jedi, her security team, a small child, an idiot, and R2-D2. Yep, nothing can go wrong. Padme makes an alliance with the CGI fish people. Anakin hijacks a ship and blows up the Trade Federation ship. The Jedi deal with the horny man who slaps Stick slaps the shit out of Qui-Gon. Despite having the high ground, he loses to Obi-Wan and falls down a big shaft. Never to be seen again.
He did have the high ground.
He did. And like I said, never seen again.
Wink, wink.
The planet is freed, and Obi-Wan promises to fulfill Qui-Gon's wish to train Anakin. The Council discusses the possible return of the Sith, and the Naboo Fishman Alliance is celebrated with an interspecies orgy. Wait, was I reading too much into that?
Yes. Why did you put that in my mind?
So that is Phantom Menace. I think I was pretty spot on. Ryan, before we get into the questions here, what did you think overall?
Overall, there was a lot of unnecessary shit in this movie. There's a lot of unnecessary shit in this movie, but at the same time, it's it hits the nostalgia factor, and it's not like on the nose nostalgia factor, but it's more like you're seeing people that you know, like beloved heroes and like ancient, like old villains, as who they were like young at young time.
Mm-hmm.
Seeing a teenage Qui-Gon Jinn, I'm sorry, seeing a teenage Obi-Wan Kenobi was like amazing for everybody involved. And it kind of has you, at least on the first watch, overlook all of the unnecessary shit, because you're like, oh shit, I know who that guy will be. Oh, that's really cool.
Mm-hmm.
Or, hey, that guy's gonna terrorize the galaxy, but he's a cute blonde kid now. Okay. So
Yeah.
I don't know. Yeah.
I agree, and I think that where's it going with this? I think the nostalgia buttons you talked about, I think they get hit a lot harder in the Disney films because they're trying to market to that nostalgia crowd, whereas this one isn't necessarily aiming for that. It's trying to bring Star Wars to a new generation, but but I think the intent was for Lucas to also, hey, here's some ties to the old movies for you old fans here, but we got to make this one for the kids. Because you have your young protagonist Anakin, you got your comic relief Jar Jar. A lot of this film is aimed at the young demographic, just based on a few of those details alone.
Yeah.
And then, I guess I should probably get in my first question here, because it ties into this a little bit. While you have all that stuff for kids, what is with the economic struggles and the taxation of trade routes and all that? Like, none of that screams childlike wonder and amazement to me. It just sounds like boring bullshit that Lucas threw together last minute.
So, okay, I don't necessarily think that it's stuff that he threw together last minute, but I think it's interesting that you bring up this kind of dichotomy, because the movie has to serve two roles. It has to market it to a brand new audience, and get it like selling fast, especially to younger kids, because they need to make money off of this shit. But also, you have Lucas, who really wants to dive deep into this universe that he's created. So while I did not enjoy the economic struggles and taxation and trade routes and all that nonsense, it's a long-standing setup to show, like, okay, this is the current state of power in the galaxy, and there's this guy over here working within it, playing multiple sides of the chessboard. It becomes more apparent in episode 2 and episode 3, but when you really look at it from a large, using a long scope, seeing Palpatine maneuver everybody before the blades come out, before the war triggers, is actually really, really interesting. And I think that's what he was trying to get set up.
Mm-hmm.
But he was trying to juggle too many plates, with both trying to make it marketable for kids and also telling this deep cut space opera story that he wanted to write. And I think the balance was off.
Yeah. I definitely think he should have leaned one way or the other, especially for this being the first time they had a Star Wars movie in, like, what, a couple decades?
Mm-hmm.
If it were me, and this is just me spitballing here, Sunday morning quarterbacking, you can call it. Or Monday morning quarterbacking, yeah, that's it.
You mean Monday night? What? No, it doesn't matter. Keep going.
It's the day after quarterbacking. There we go. Basically, I would have leaned more towards the kids. I would have leaned more towards the fantasy and the adventure. And to me, that seems obvious, but only because you want to draw them in, you want to get them interested, and then you dive deeper in the sequel. I think that's been established in other franchises and trilogies, where the first one's always like the fun, outgoing, like adventure one. It addresses some of the lore to get you started, but the deep dive doesn't happen until the second one in most cases, from what I've seen, and that's when it pays off more. And I think that these films may have mixed it up a little bit, because I think Episode 2 is more taking place in the now, and it has a little less focus on the lore and the backstory, whereas this one kind of overbloats it a little bit too much.
Yeah, no, I feel you. I definitely feel you. And I agree with that. Like, I agree with that decision to lean towards the kids. Like, honesty. Because think about think about the like the decades like of time. Like this is the first Star Wars movie that we've had in decades when people weren't even sure we were actually going to get more
Mm-hmm.
movies. Like you not only have to do right by the fans that have been waiting for fucking 20 years, but you also want to catch as many of the new people who are like, hey, what's Star Wars? And I think that definitely outweighs the story that he wanted to tell. Like I personally really like the story, but I think he could have used the less is more approach. He didn't have to make like the central conflict around like a political embroiled like fight over this planet. Like sure it made for some cool scenes with the war with the Gungans and the droids and like trying to escape the planet and race the blockade. Like that was pretty cool, but like if the crux of the movie is essentially a political debate, and like people are going to be bored out of their minds and they're not going to be paying attention to the fact that the guy that manipulated everything, that's the emperor, that's him, this is
Yeah.
how he starts.
And they weren't very subtle about it either. Like, if you've known anything about Star Wars, it's obvious. But like, even if you don't know anything about Star Wars, this guy whispered in everyone's ears, and the camera's slowly panning to him at the end. And they say, "Well, do we get the Master or the Apprentice?" It's like, okay, guys, a little on the nose here. I mean, we all know he's Mysterio. Come on.
I am Mysterio. Yeah, no, you're right. It was a little on the nose, but for younger kids and for people that were just getting into it and were not maybe as astute as you were, it. I felt like there were notes that he hit that worked. It was just embroiled in a bunch of unnecessary shit that he didn't need, and I feel like the overall impact was diluted because of it.
That's fair. That's fair. I have a lot of time on the first question. Let's get to this next one here. Does Anakin seem too young for this film? Especially considering he goes into marrying a girl who has gotta be at least 8 years older than her, maybe 10, in the next film.
Yeah, that was odd. It was odd. I mean, I think it goes to. Okay, so I think it goes to from a marketing perspective, trying to get like young kids. You definitely brought that up, but I think when you also consider the lore of the Jedi and how they really don't want to take like older kids because they want to kind of mold them from the cradle up. Which is kind of problematic in and of itself, but we don't touch that.
We'll get to why the Jedi are on in a future episode. Don't you worry.
Yeah, I think they made an in-universe rationale for why he couldn't have been older, but I definitely think it would have possibly helped if he was a little older. Like, it wouldn't have made Padme and Anakin ending up together so gross.
I think he could have been older. I
think he could have been older.
In this film, he's, 8, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Like that.
So I would say no older than 13. I think of another 5 years, and I would have been like, okay, I'm on board for this. And my reason is this. Luke becomes a Jedi at least 16, maybe 18. He's too old. And this whole series, this whole franchise, as we'll discuss throughout the series, is all about symmetry and poetic structure and everything. And it would have made more sense to me on that ground, as well as the whole age difference, as well as the whole, he's going to grow up to be this bad guy. If they started him in his teenage years, where he's forming these opinions, these emotions, these hormones are all happening, it would have made more sense for him to start this darker path as he becomes a Jedi at the beginning of his teenage years, where his life is just suddenly ripped away from him and it's put into something else completely. And like I said,
you know what, that actually would be, that's a very good argument, especially considering the fact that it kind of would have proved the Jedi right.
Mm-hmm.
If he they said, well, the reason we can't take him is because he's too old and there's been too much of his old life that he's lived outside of the teachings of the Jedi to really control your emotions and shit like that. So he's not going to be really equipped to handle the shit. And then when he goes to be 18, 19 years old, he finally snaps and kills everybody because, you know, he still had that old in him. And that would have been interesting to do. But at the same time, it was cool to see an 8-year-old pod racing and blowing people up. It's just, there were some points, and I don't know if you could call it a fault of the directing, a fault of the child actor that they used, but it kind of seemed like the 8-year-old was just joking around and having a grand old time while also doing things that are impossible for everybody else. It's just like, oh, it's like a pod race. Here we go. It proceeds to shoot down a whole fucking like platoon of droids. I'm like, what? What are you doing?
Now this is plot devising.
Sir, I tip my hat. I don't have a hat, but I tip it to you.
That should be the motto of this season. This is plot devising.
God, that's so good.
Okay. What do you think of the Jedi overall in the context of this film? I emphasize this film because this context will change as we go throughout this series without question.
I think... Okay, so in the context of this film, I think everybody was honestly just really excited to see the Jedi Order in its full glory, because you come straight from the original series where there's literally like two in the two actually known in the galaxy right now. And like to go from such scarcity and like where they're hiding out and trying to teach this kid the secret wisdom to actually seeing them in the height of their power, I think is really, really cool. I like being able to see the Jedi Council and seeing like this group of diverse, like older, wiser Jedi that are like in the height of their power, also trying to do wise things, but also kind of complacent in their strength, because they haven't been challenged for like centuries, and they like it. There's almost a slight arrogance to the Jedi Council, but it's not overstated because they're too wise for that. But at the same time, if you read between the lines, you can see, you know, they haven't really been jostled in a very long time. So it was hard for them to actually, it was hard to them to respond to the threat, which was really interesting.
Yeah, they weren't prepared for the Sith to rustle their jimmies, if you know what I mean.
And there were only 2 Sith! Damn!
So I'll chime in. I like... So starting off, I like visually what we see, because I love space and sci-fi films and all that stuff, where we get to see a variety of aliens and a variety of, like, organisms all interact with one another. And if you look at the Council, you've got humans, you've got Coneheads, you've got Yoda, you've got that weird dude with, like, the face mask thing, you've got that fish guy with squid hair, you got all these different aliens here. I know they have I know they have names. I actually know a couple of them. But just bear with me. So you have all these different aliens here, and I love when films do that, because I love seeing these different races, these different species all interact with one another. It's why some shows really click with me and other ones don't. Namely, I want to try to get into Star Trek, but you know, the majority of that cast is a bunch of, like, you know, humans. It's like, oh, okay, well, it's a bunch of humans, no big deal. They usually have an alien or two on the ship, but they're like, okay, 1 or 2 aliens, it's whatever. Here you get a smorgasbord, you get a good mix. I'm like, okay, this is cool. I do wish they did more, though. I wish they were a little more involved in the goings-on here, which is why I absolutely adore Qui-Gon Jinn's antics throughout the movie. I wish he hadn't been cut down so soon in this franchise. He was fun. He was a good time. He was a great time.
He was a great time. It was really It was a really interesting dichotomy to see, like, this group of, like, wise established masters, and then Qui-Gon, who is like unquestionably an effective Jedi Knight, Jedi Master, but
he's a rebel.
He's a rebel. he is the first, like, rebellious Jedi that we've seen, and that's really interesting. Not only in the concept of just him, but seeing how he affects Obi-Wan, because he teaches Obi-Wan, like Obi-Wan's got like this innate sense of caution to him, but he also gives him that edge to kind of press the boundary a little bit. And so when we see him in episode 2, we see him kind of like in the full force of like who the man he grows up to become. You know, he's got caution, but he's also got a little bit of recklessness, and you can point at him and say, that's that Qui-Gon in him. And that's really, really cool to see. I also wish we had more time with Qui-Gon, but at the same time, Obi-Wan is who we're all here to see.
Yeah.
So I'm not too mad at it.
Well, minor spoilers for a future episode we're going to do. But, I mean, these movies have been out for a while, so, fair game.
Spoiler alert. Sorry, guys. From 1999. Spoiler alert.
So at the end of episode 3, when everything's said and done, Yoda and Obi-Wan are talking, and he's like, you can learn more from your old master, and he's like, Qui-Gon Jinn? And I remember in the books, they hinted at the idea that that Qui-Gon is speaking from, like, as he's one with the Force, in the book, if I remember correctly. And I'm like, I wish they'd bring that aspect a little bit in the movie, like, maybe show, like, a glimmer of a Force ghost from him. I get that would probably be too much, but, like, I would have been down for that. Just, like, a brief 2 or 3 seconds where he's just, like, there, giving a little head nod, and then the movie's over or something like that. That would have been cool.
Yeah, I mean, so at the end of the third movie, when Yoda's like, hey, you can learn more from your master, who has, like, apparently found the secret to immortality. Like, it's kind of implied at that point that Qui-Gon, the rebel, is, like, one of the first Jedi in a very long time to figure out how to actually preserve his consciousness in the Force as a Force ghost, which is very, very interesting. And, like, I don't think they get, like, Obi-Wan doesn't really get to go into that until, like, after episode 3, between episode 3 and 4. Mm-hmm. So you'd have to have, like, a show in between that time in order to, like, following Obi-Wan in order to actually get into that.
I wonder if such a show exists.
That follows Obi-Wan, though, not anybody else.
Well, I mean, Rebels has been for a little bit. There's something.
Rebels is fantastic, but I mean, like, if you really want to get into, like, the intricacies of the first Jedi to actually preserve his consciousness after death, then we need something entirely different.
Yeah, I know. And I know they wanted to do a spin-off of Obi-Wan with Obi-Wan for, like, a prequel kind of thing, and I guess they derailed that thanks to Solo's bad performance, and, yeah. What's funny is that is the one prequel idea they threw out there that I'm like, I am down for this. This is the character I actually give a shit about. But they decided, nah, we're not going to get that far. Never mind. Anyway, speaking of Force ghosts and Force powers and Force, what are your thoughts on metachlorians, Ryan?
God damn it. See, I knew we were going to have to address this in this movie. I know.
It's like someone put their dick on the table. You can't just ignore it. You have to address it.
That's an apt analogy. That's an apt analogy, sir. Okay, so my thought, like, I hate it. First and foremost, I hate it. Here's, like, my deeper thoughts on it are that, for me, Star Wars has always been a fantasy that has on the clothes of a science fiction story. It's a space opera.
I think the term they use is science fantasy in most cases.
Yeah. I mean, it's a space opera, and it has all the trappings of a science fiction piece, and it's really, really good. But at the heart of it, this mystical power that rare people have that can allow them to do crazy things. That's magic. That's straight up magic. And when you go on to describe the Force as a mythical energy that, like, surrounds and touches all living things, and there are certain people that are allowed to tap into that, and then you get into the ways of the Force and, like, all of the philosophies that go into accessing that. That's really interesting stuff. Mm-hmm. But I think Lucas wanted to do more of a science fiction story rather than a fantasy story. So I feel like midichlorians are his way of overcorrecting
I think it ties in what you were saying earlier, though. He wanted to dive deeper into the lore, deeper into the mechanics of the series, rather than to focus on the narrative of the series.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that this plays into that whole taxation thing, where it's like, it's just another one of those examples of him over-explaining something that doesn't need explaining. I don't necessarily hate the idea, because what we learned in the Marvel films is that a advanced enough science is basically magic, and a magic that is complex enough, it basically looks like science fiction. So this idea kind of falls in there a little bit, but it's very poorly and ham-fistedly thrown in there.
Yeah, I think it's a way to kind of like over-explain this thing, to kind of remove some of the mysticism out of it, which I don't agree with. But it was also kind of a very tell, don't show way of signifying how special Anakin actually is. Never mind, he's an 8-year-old with like preternatural reflexes and can pretty much see the future. Never mind that, we have to make up some crazy thing so that we can say, oh, this kid's more powerful than Yoda. And I'm just like,
this child's more powerful than Jesus, even.
I personally didn't like it, because I feel like it doesn't cancel out the mysticism and the mysticism and the mythology and the
but it obscures
philosophy,
it, though.
It dilutes it. You know, it makes it a little less impactful when you see these wise men, and like the reason that they're so powerful and they're so wise is because they have a deeper understanding of the universe, not because they have microbes in their blood that allow them to access an energy that nobody else can. Well, that cheapens it for me a little bit.
And I think it's a problem that gets kind of corrected in episode 7, which I know we're going to have arguments about. But in that movie, they kind of go into the idea and a little bit that anyone can be a Jedi. Anyone has the ability to access the Force within reason.
And then they fucked it up.
We don't know that.
I'm saving it. Damn it.
We don't know that for sure. But I think that actively tries to backpedal the midichlorians a bit, and I think that is a good idea. It may not have been the best executed to some people, sure, but it's a good idea to backpedal and say, listen, midichlorians don't mean anything. They're like the power levels in Dragon Ball Z. They don't actually matter.
Welcome to Star Wars, where the midichlorians don't matter.
Man, we're dropping some deep cuts today. It's great. Speaking of deep cuts, let's talk about Jar Jar Binks.
Must we?
Yes. This is a two-part question. First, the thoughts on Jar Jar Binks, and then we dive deeper into the film's reliance on CGI as a whole. Let's start with Jar Jar.
Can we just go to the second part of the question?
Nope.
That's a really good question. I want to get to it.
Well, he ties into it, though. So here's my thing. Jar Jar is only needed for, 3 minutes. You introduce him, he's like, hey, I know where the city is, he takes you there, you get your ship to Naboo, done. He doesn't need to be in any of the rest of the movie going forward, personally, for me. And I think that they kept him in, like I said with Anakin earlier, for toy sales, for bringing in the kids. But it's such a bad portrayal of a character, and I'm not trying to blame the actor. I get the feeling he did everything he could with what he was given. But he's a stereotype, and he's put together with very dated CGI. Looking back on him, I'm like, oh my god, this face is terrifying. And he's just not funny like he's supposed to be. I know people who hate the Ewoks and love Jar Jar, and I don't understand where you're coming from. The Ewoks didn't talk. I can accept that over this any day of the week.
Yeah, I mean, you at the end of the day, you had teddy bears going and fucking taking down stormtroopers. That was cool. That's all we needed. Mm-hmm. That's literally all we needed.
But yeah, no, I think that if you'd stopped him at the end of the city, I would laugh at the idea too when I was again mentally doing cuts here. At the end of the scene where they're talking to Boss Nass and they're walking away, and he asks what becomes of Jar Jar, and Boss Nass is like, oh, he'll be executed. And I would have loved it if Qui-Gon's like, oh, okay, later.
That's too millennial of a move for 1999. You can't, like, I don't think they were capable of being that fucking sarcastic. Be like, oh sure, all right, fine. Like, fine.
Hey, it's your loss, man. I can't really tell you what to do.
Oh shit. Oh, that would have been a great move.
Okay, I'll turn to you. Where you land on this one?
I try not to think about Jar Jar Binks too much. I like my thoughts echo your own. Like, in all honesty, I feel like he was there to drive toy sales, and he was there to inject. Like I feel like he's an overcorrection. I feel like he was there to inject comedic relief into the story, and it was just too much. Like you said, it's an amalgamation of stereotypes that are just real bad, and it's just every time he opens his mouth, it makes me want to punch him out. So it's just like, ugh, no.
Mm-hmm.
I don't even mind the fact that he's like a fully CGI character. In all honesty, I would rather we do the millennial cut and fucking Jar Jar's gonna be executed. Fuck him. And then when the actual when the actual war starts to kick off, we would just deal with that long suffering like commander of the Gungans.
Yeah.
You know, like no again, Jar Jar. Yousa go into the boss. It's that guy. I could have watched some more of him and followed him throughout the actual.
Yousa thinking Weesa gonna die?
God damn it!
Well, like the reason they even bring bring Jar Jar with them is to navigate through the Earth to the core. But I'm like, do you need him for that? He didn't really navigate you guys. He freaked out. He was knocked out, and then he woke up, and they're there. Like, that's it. He didn't do anything. He added nothing to the plot.
It just makes me upset. Now, of course, my fury was compounded when my fury was compounded in episode 3 with in the later episodes when Jar Jar is actually made into a fucking senator for Naboo, and I'm like, why?
Well, because he's obviously a Sith Lord orchestrating the whole situation.
No, fuck that. This dude is a goddamn moron. You like the Queen traveled with him for fucking weeks, and you made that dude a senator? Why?
Meesa thinking the Jedi gonna die.
God damn it. Like no lie, if they actually went with Darth Jar Jar, that would have been the ballsiest.
I would have forgiven everything.
Ballsiest.
I would have forgiven everything had they committed to that.
We'll talk about commitment issues with Star Wars later movies.
Oh yeah,
we'll talk about that.
I think Lucas has those, maybe. So CGI, we got to get to that real quick. So I want to address an issue here. So this movie first came out in 1999, and when I ever saw it the first time, and many times afterward, I remember distinctly Yoda being a Muppet. Not the original Muppet from back in the day, a younger looking Muppet that looked a little off, but he was a Muppet all the same, right?
In the original movies, sure.
Yeah. In this version, I have a Blu-ray version of the movie. I don't remember when it was released. I got it from a used bookstore, and it was a bundle deal, good deal. But I watched it when I saw this, and he was full CGI Yoda from episodes 2 and 3, and I'm like, when did y'all swap this on me? Have I been hoodwinked? I'm like, why did you go to this way? This is ridiculous.
I mean, he's not moving all that much. He's mostly just sitting on his chair and talking and looking wise. The only real time you see him move is at the end when he's talking with Obi-Wan and saying, "Okay, you're a full-fledged Jedi Knight, but I really don't think you should train this kid."
It just seems like a lot of money to spend on a remaster or re-releasing of a movie for a character who doesn't do a whole lot. Like, if he was more involved in the plot, maybe, but he's in it for maybe, 5-10 minutes?
That's odd. I saw it. I saw him as a Muppet, so I
Yeah,
couldn't tell you like which re-release
it was
actually
it
did
was
that.
weird.
It's like the re-releases of the original ones that put Hayden Christensen in as a Force Ghost. And like, stop it.
I have
Just
words for
stop
that.
it.
I have words for that. But okay, moving on from there, and more, let's get to more CGI stuff. So, what do you think about the CGI overall? Good, bad, needs work, doesn't need work, problematic? Where are we at? Where are we at? What are we doing?
It's 1999, so they definitely had ways to go. But I think honestly they were trying to flex. They were trying to press the boundaries of CGI at the time, and a movie that they're expecting to gross like ridiculously high numbers. You know, they wanted to show off. I can understand that. And Star Wars has like this built-in excuse for doing everything CGI because guess what? They're all on alien planets. So it would make less sense to do these huge and so much of the movie is shot in these like wide open spaces that it necessarily wouldn't make sense to make huge elaborate sets, but rather like condense the sets down to like stuff that they need for the actors to interact and then do the CGI over it. I wasn't mad at it. Like, it's dated because it came out in 1999, but I personally didn't have too big of an issue with it.
I mean, here's the thing though, Ryan. We are calling this film dated for 1999, and we spoke last year about how Jurassic Park still looks good
Man,
from
not
1993.
every movie can be Jurassic Park. That was a once in a lifetime thing, dude.
I'm just saying. These guys could have definitely stepped up their game on the CGI thing.
I tell you what. If if Spielberg ever wants to run a Star Wars movie, I'll absolutely watch it. I'll 100% watch that.
Oh yeah, no, he's got my money already. Like, just put the Spielberg name on there,
Like,
slap it on.
I'll pre-order that. I'll pre-order a Spielberg Star Wars piece. I'll pre-order that.
Damn straight. But no. So, like, a lot of the CGI here is very spotty. I think Jar Jar, for example, is one that I'm like, that face alone scares me sometimes when I look at it. It wasn't bad back in the day, but looking at it in certain frames of this film, this viewing, I was like, ugh, what happened? This looks terrifying. What child wanted this in their room? What the hell? But I think this plays into another problem I have, which is the next question a little bit, so I'll kind of double dip here. The stakes of this film feel a bit weak to me, because a lot of the characters battling are CGI characters, and half of them are characters that aren't even alive. They're just droids, and it just makes the conflict feel less meaningful. Whereas back in the original trilogy, it was, rebels versus the soldiers, and it felt like there was actual stakes, actual lives at stake here. Whereas here, it's like, okay, we're fighting robots. It's like, and they're not even good robots. They're just little twiggy pieces of shit. Like, I don't know. I just felt like there was never a moment in this film where I'm worried these guys aren't going to be able to make it. Until Darth Maul fights them, obviously, but like throughout the majority of the film, like, I'm not worried these guys aren't going to make it, because obviously they're not going to die to a giant fish monster, they're not going to die to a bunch of robots. There's better things they can get killed by. Clearly.
That's interesting. I personally didn't... Let me think about that.
And I know this problem gets compounded a little bit in the next film, because it goes from being, these group of characters versus machines that are, kind of shitty, to a bunch of faceless clones and a bunch of faceless droids fight each other. And I know that we'll get into that more next time, but, like, I know that is a criticism of the next film. And it's like, the original trilogy at least had a conflict with an enemy force that I can kind of, like, put a face to, even if they're all wearing those helmets. I can still at least acknowledge that they are human, they are biological, they can be killed, they can kill you, there's actually, like, a desire for them to do their job. These machines have no desire, there's no will, there's nothing driving them other than just programming, and there's an attempt to give them personality, but it just feels like more of a weakness of the machines at that point, because it's like, they're inept, they're incapable of what they're doing, they act goofy, which I get it's for the kids, but, like, in a narrative level, they're not a threat to me at that point. It's like, oh, hey, these guys don't know what they're doing. They're incompetent. They're easy. We could just knock them over with the Force. You know? I don't know. I just feel like this movie's stakes were very lackluster overall.
I agree. I do agree. I didn't personally have an issue with it because while I was watching it, it wasn't like this movie isn't really a setup for like dire straits for like everybody's in turmoil and like the fate of billions of people are at stake. Although kind of it is because there are a lot of people that live on the planet Naboo. But you're right. The stakes for this particular movie are definitely lesser than the other movies. I think the focus of the movie wasn't necessarily the stakes involved, but rather laying the groundwork for not only the new trilogy that they're gonna set up, but for the old trilogy that's already come its way. I think the focus of the movie is more on doing groundwork rather than like establishing like really big stakes for them to deal with over the course of the next two movies, if that makes any sense.
Yeah. And I want you to keep that in mind, because at the end of this original trilogy, I will ask the question, or this prequel trilogy, I'm going to ask the question, are there any such things as good prequels? Don't answer it now. I just want you to think about it. I want you to think about it between now and then.
That's a question. I like that.
I'll
keep that in the back of my mind.
Okay. Anything else you want to cover there before we move on to the next question?
No, we can move on.
Okay. So we kind of cover the droids a little bit. Okay. Last question I got here, and we can move on to our final segment, which is reviewing the film. So as cool as the battle is between Maul and the Jedi, I feel like it's incredibly disconnected from everything else.
It is.
And I'm trying to figure out what the point of it is, other than just getting rid of Qui-Gon so Obi-Wan can take up the mantle and train Anakin for the rest of the trilogy. And it feels like it's just a very, like, it feels very plot devicey, if you get what I mean.
It is ham-fisted. You're correct. I think a lot of that is also because Darth Maul's role was relegated to just mute fucking like thug that just hangs out in the background and is menacing because he has horns on his head. You're correct. The only real reason for like the Maul 2-on-1 fight is to have a big lightsaber battle at the end of it to drive sales. Because if you think that I didn't buy a double-sided lightsaber when I was 9, you are fucking you're out of your mind. You're out of your mind. Of course, they sold millions of those things off of that one scene alone. So merchandising, definitely. You gotta have a big ass lightsaber fight because like you want to have like you wanted to do a big lightsaber battle like now that we're nearly in the year 2000 when we have the technology that can actually keep up with it. We have younger actors that can actually do these really like crazy choreographed fights. And you're seeing the Jedi and the Sith at the height of their power. So these are guys that actually are trained in lightsaber combat, as opposed to Luke, who's just kind of going off of the Force and having like cut a whole bunch of people's arms off. So I'm glad to have seen that. And of course, you had to get Qui-Gon out of the way so that Obi-Wan could really take up the mantle and do what he's supposed to do and really come into his own. But in regards to its connection to the actual like overarching plot of the movie, you're right. It's definitely separate. It does a lot of stuff outside of the movie, but for the actual plot, it does very little.
Mm-hmm. I remember reading a fan's attempt to rewrite this plot a little bit. I like the way they went about it. They went about it in a way where Maul was actually a Jedi during the events of this film to start. Obviously changes, but the premise they threw out there was Qui-Gon has passed on the mantle, or has passed on to another Jedi, Padawan, to train in the name of in the guise of Maul. Obi-Wan has been upgraded to a Jedi Knight, and he's been taken on the role of Anakin. They don't bother with any of the stuff that brings him into the story. He's just kind of here. He's inherited. We get to that backstory later. And the premise of this rewrite basically was that Maul betrays them in the process of whatever quest they're on and kills Qui-Gon. And then Obi-Wan is on a quest of revenge against Maul, which teaches him about the delicate balance between the light and dark side, which informs Anakin's viewpoint, which leads him to the dark side at the end of the whole thing, as Obi-Wan slowly comes back to realizing that what he's doing and his quest for vengeance is a wrong way to go about things. I read up at this, and I'm like, that's very clever and simplifies a lot of what they tried to do here.
It is, but at the same time, it means that we'd have less Qui-Gon, which I am 100% against.
Well, that wouldn't have been the whole film. That would have been like something you drag out through the trilogy. He would have still probably died at the end of the first film, but that's more or less the idea, yeah.
Yeah. Okay, that's interesting.
Yeah.
It's definitely interesting, but
you get more Maul for sure, at least.
You definitely get more Maul, which would have been great. Because I could have done without Count Dooku. I could have.
I can't wait to talk about Dookie. That'll be great.
I could have passed him up. I could have passed him by. But I think that's very interesting.
Why don't we get Asajj Ventress in here? She was pretty cool. Bring her up. Bring her up in the ranks.
Please. Bruh, with the reverse grip, dual curved lightsabers, the girl with the black and white paint that just is a fucking ninja. Come on, guys. Come on. She was so cool.
Dude, Clone Wars is pretty solid for the most part. I can't say anything bad about it. But we'll get to that later. Okay. Before we move on to the final segment, Ryan, how would you have modified this film? Knowing what you know now, knowing what comes later, what would you have done to improve this film? We're gonna do some more day after quarterbacking here.
All right, day after quarterbacking. Excuse me. I definitely would have toned down the political talk. I think the overall points of what they're trying to get across could have been better explained and definitely simplified. You could have at the very least you could have had a character in there simply for the point of having to explain what all of this shit means to a normal person, because you had Jedi Knights and Queens and all of these high-level people that were making these decisions and dealing with the blockade, but you could have just had one person. You know what? Fuck it. If you had made Jar Jar Binks a little smarter and a little less annoying, he could have filled this role, because Jar Jar is just a normal person who also lives on Naboo. And what you could have done then was shift the focus on, okay, all of this taxation bullshit, what does that mean to the people that actually live on the planet? Bring the problem down to a normal level where people can actually kind of digest it. And you can still have the Senate scene, you can still have the Queen having to work with her senator, who ends up being the fucking most evil person in the galaxy. You could have had all of that if you took the overall narrative and brought it down to a normal person level.
I think you hit the nail on the head. My two suggestions would be Anakin should be a little older. 13, I think, is absolutely perfect for the idea that you could go with, and it could definitely play in a lot of stuff, like we mentioned earlier. Mm-hmm. And two, simplify. You say it a lot, and I agree. Simplify, because we've said this a couple times during the podcast already. A lot of this film feels like an overcorrection, but I'm trying to figure out what they're overcorrecting from, because it's been 2 decades roughly since the previous Jedi movies, and what are you correcting from?
Yeah, the original trilogy was a fucking hit. Everybody loved it. Everybody was waiting to see what happens next. Why are you fixing what's not broke?
And the original trilogy had the basic themes and premise of a rebellion fighting a fascist government. Something that is still evergreen content to talk about. And here, I am unclear what the theme of the story is. I'm unclear what the underlying themes and messages are for this film. I know they're there, and I know there's something I can glean from it, but it's not nearly as clear-cut as the original trilogy, and with that compounding with the complexities of this narrative, it makes it really hard to connect with on any meaningful level.
Yeah. I feel like, and I mentioned it earlier, I feel like the primary aim of this particular film was to lay the groundwork for the following movies.
Mm-hmm. And like I said earlier, the sequels tend to build up from a movie with expanded lore and expanded ideas. The original film of a trilogy or series or whatever should be very simple to get anyone in, so that way when the next one comes out, they have a baseline to work with and can grow from there.
And it's 100% possible to lay down like groundwork for future films while also allowing the movie to stand on its own right. If you just look at Phantom Menace by itself, separate from all the other movies, it's kind of a boring movie. Like, in all honesty,
it is.
The things that it shines at, the things that it shines on, are what it actually means for the series as a whole. And I personally like looking at saga-long stories. That's why one of the reasons why I love the MCU so much. Mm-hmm. But it also has to be able to stand on its own 2 feet. And I think like this movie doesn't really have a leg to stand on, except for the fact that it's trying to put all these pieces into play. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yep. And we've had the discussion before, too, with the Marvel films. You know, they have to be fulfill 2 roles of being part of a big quilt and part of it and be its own, like, strong enough patch to be its own thing. So, yeah, you do a great job. You did a great job summing that up very well.
Thank you.
And if you want to throw us your opinions on what this film should have done or what you want to see from future Star Wars films, or if you just want to say hi to us, you can reach out to us on Tumblr, Twitter, or Facebook. You can also go to our lovely email. Ryan, what is that email?
That email is thebigbosnaciana Meesa. Excuse me. That's evacstation@gmail.com. God, I'll never do that again.
I'm glad I had subtitles on when I was watching this movie, because there are some things that he was saying, and I'm like, oh, I didn't realize that's what he said. That makes no goddamn sense.
Yousa say boom de gas, then smashing the boss's head liver, then vanished. I have it like seared into my memory. I can't forget like his voice in my head right now.
He's one of those he's a unique character in a film that everyone is familiar with, as long as they've seen the movies, obviously. But like, he's one that stays with you. You don't want him to, but he's there, and he's always watching you.
He is indeed there.
I kind of want to see him face off against, like, Michael Myers and Freddy Krueger and just see if he can hold his own for 5 minutes.
He would ineptly beat both of them.
He would probably
running for his life.
He'd probably pull, like, a Scooby Shaggy thing and just accidentally trip over something and, like, somehow kill them both.
Oh my god, no. Like he plays like 90% of the movie like a moron and like serendipitously getting across it. And then like as like something crazy happens to kill Freddy Krueger while he's standing there, you just see him get this look in his eye and you see the slight like red tint in his pupil, and then it fades to black. That's it.
And then there's a very like subtle thing at the end of the credits, like you just hear him say you see the dead body of Krueger, you see his mouth come close to his ears, like, "You said dreaming if you think you kill me."
God damn it! No, end the podcast. No, I'm done with this. It's horribleness.
We're gonna do more Jar Jar quotes for bullshit. It'd be great. So yeah, final thoughts. We're gonna rank the film. Should we stick to our usual method of the platinums for shit?
Sure.
I think it makes sense. So yeah, I'll dive in real quick. I think I know where I want to put it.
All right.
I might be a bit harsh, but I'm not gonna lie. During my viewing of the film, there were moments where my eyelids were getting heavy, and I was worried I was falling asleep. And I'm like, oh nope, I gotta sit up for this now. Combined with everything we discussed, combined with all the issues going on, and knowing that there are much better films down the road that we're going to get to, I am going to give this a fairly strong stone ranking.
Yeah, we are actually of one accord on this. As much as I love the pieces that it actually sets on the board, it doesn't stand on its own very well. It's I can definitely look at it and feel the nostalgia of being 9 years old and seeing Darth Maul hit the double-bladed lightsaber and me losing my goddamn mind. But like from a like in a total perspective, yeah, it doesn't do enough by itself to really warrant a higher ranking, which is sad because like each of the original trilogy, each movie in the original trilogy, you can point to it and be like, yes, this is a complete fucking movie.
Mm-hmm.
This is what it was doing, this is what it was saying, and this is what it was adding to the overall narrative. It did all the things, and it did, and like it's good. It's good. It's sad to see the initial like attempts to get back to that kind of flounder a little bit, but we've got better movies on the horizon. So never
Indeed.
fear, guys. Never
Indeed.
fear.
I'm looking forward to more. I for as much down talk as we've been doing, I genuinely like this series, and I cannot wait to see what comes next. Next week, though, we are doing Attack of the Clones, and I believe Robbie's joining us, so we'll have a three-peat next week.
Oh, that'll be fun. Cool.
Yep. So, I'm going to thank everybody for watching, listening, however you're enjoying this show, and instead of saying my usual closeout, may the Force be with you.
Aw, may the Force be with you. Bye.